Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here we are seeing Kashyapa Muni is sitting in trance after offering his oblations to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where he offered grains, clarified butter through the fire, and Lord Vishnu is said to be that his tongue is the sacrificial fire from where the Lord accepts all these different oblations offered to him. And Prabhupada is pointing out because the Lord is the master of yajna. Lord Vishnu is the master of all sacrifices. And then Prabhupada explains that if we satisfy the Supreme Lord Vishnu or Krishna, then automatically it includes the satisfaction of all demigods and all other living beings. Once, when Prabhupada was incorporating ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, when Prabhupada wanted to incorporate this in America, this was somewhere in 1965-66. So many of the friends, well-wishers, they suggested to Prabhupada, Swamiji, why you want to call it Krishna Consciousness? Better it should be more appealing to people. Why don't you call it as International Society for God Consciousness? So Prabhupada immediately rejected. And Prabhupada said that many such friends suggested to me that better I should call it as God Consciousness, but I rejected because the moment you say God Consciousness, they will bring so many gods. They will bring so many incarnations. They will bring so many avatars. Here is one God, here is another God. Isn't it? So, actually, right from the very beginning of Bhagavatam, conception of God is rejected. Bhagavatam from the very beginning talks about conception of absolute, not conception of God. There is a difference. Prabhupada says there is a difference between conception of God and conception of absolute. Because when we say the conception of God, what do we understand? The conception of God means controller. And when we say conception of absolute truth, it means conception of summum bonum. So right very much in the beginning, Bhagavatam says this Bhagavatam is not talking about some conception of controllers, because there are many controllers. Ishvara. There are many Ishvaras. Bhagavatam is talking about conception of Satyam Param Dhimahi. It is talking about Sammam Bonam. Prabhupada says Satyam Param means it is the final word in existence. Sammam Bonam. And what is that Sammam Bonam? What is the definition of Sammam Bonam? The definition of Sammam Bonam is, the definition of absolute truth is, He is the origin of everything. He is the origin of everything. That is actually the definition of absolute. Janmadhyasya yataha. Even the Vedanta Sutra says, what is the definition of absolute? From whom everything emanates. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Krishna says, when one knows I am origin of everything, what does he do? What does a devotee do? Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattaha sarvam pravartate iti matva. Iti matva means knowing this, bhajante mam. The devotee renders devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So actually, this is not when Prabhupada is saying, because sometimes we find a lot of people also ask us, one student, he read through books of Prabhupada and he was surprised completely. He came back and he said, what is this? Prabhupada, every page only he talks about Krishna. Nothing else, he is only talking about Krishna. Isn't it? Then he is saying that actually this is not our Vedas. If you go through the Vedas, if you go through Vedanta, Krishna is not mentioned like this. Everywhere Prabhupada's books you find only Krishna, Krishna. Isn't it? So sometimes people ask this question, that what is this, your Krishna conscious society, you are only doing everything about Krishna, morning to night only Krishna. What is this? Isn't it? Our morning begins with Aarti for the Lord, and then chanting the holy name of the Lord, and then once again bathing the Lord, dressing the Lord, and then offering bhoga to Lord, and even while eating only prasadam, eating prasadam of the Lord, dancing for the Lord, hearing about the Lord, chanting about the Lord. Isn't it? Everything Krishna, Krishna. So sometimes people become perplexed about this. They actually are not able to understand the goal of life, the goal of human life is to change our consciousness, which has now become animal consciousness, to Krishna consciousness. Now it is material consciousness. So they don't understand. And whatever we are doing is meant for making us Krishna conscious. That is very important. So once in Australia, Prabhupada had just gone around 3 to 4 times to Australia, and Krishna consciousness was not very well known like in America. So this is after Prabhupada had opened centers, many centers in America, and then Prabhupada wanted to introduce Krishna consciousness in Australia. So there were many articles, many negative articles which came out. So one of the devotee had offered Rolls-Royce car to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, came from airport to the temple in Rolls-Royce. So the article, in a taunting, in a kind of a funny way, it published, Swamiji comes rolling in, just like, so Rolls-Royce. So it was made as Swamiji comes rolling in. And then it describes about how the whole group of Prabhupada and Prabhupada Swamiji, high-tech Swamiji and his disciples offered him Rolls-Royce car, and Swamiji sat in that car, and from airport he came to the temple like that. Prabhupada, of course, did not mind all these. Then, one night, one reporter came and he was discussing with Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada was trying to impress upon that reporter the importance of becoming Krishna conscious. And that if you don't utilize this human form of life properly, our consciousness will glide down to animal consciousness, and probably in the next life we may become animals. So next day in the newspaper there was an article, and the title of that article, it was a negative article. The reporter did not take it properly, and he concocted, and in a very flashy way he published one article. So it was published as Krishna sect founder says, I will return as animal. Krishna sect founder says, I will return as animal. And then further it says, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, is resigned to dying soon, then returning to earth as an animal. You see, because generally in Christianity they don't have a concept of coming back as an animal. They are thinking once a human, always a human. So here Prabhupada was saying that once we die, there is a position that we can even come down, our consciousness can come down and we can return as an animal. So he is putting it on Prabhupada and is saying, Swamiji is saying that he will return, after dying he will return as an animal. So all the devotees were very disturbed. So they received that newspaper in Australia in the temple. Prabhupada had gone for a morning walk, and by the time the newspaper came, all the devotees, they saw the newspaper and they were all discussing that article. So one devotee was there, Amogha Das, he was thinking, better I will write to the editor of this paper and tell him to put the correct version and not this version what he has written. This is not what Prabhupada meant. So they were all discussing what Prabhupada will think about this. Probably he will be very furious once he comes back from the morning walk. And then Prabhupada came back from the morning walk and it was time for Bhagavatam class. So then Prabhupada sat on his Vyasasana and he was talking. And then Prabhupada again picked up that point. So Prabhupada was in the lecture, he said, in the Bhagavatam lecture which he was giving. So he was talking on the second canto, and the whole hall was packed with, devotees there. So then Prabhupada said, at the moment, I may be working as an American or European or an Australian. Because Prabhupada was in Australia, and so he was in the class, he was quoting. At the moment I may be working as an American or European or as an Australian, but this is temporary, because the body is temporary. As soon as this body is finished, I will begin another chapter of duty. Suppose this life I am human being, next life I may not be human being. Then Prabhupada paused. Everybody was silent. Because everybody started contemplating the same point Prabhupada is bringing about again, which he had brought to the reporter. And the reporter has misunderstood the whole thing and put it in a different way. Isn't it? And then Prabhupada paused and then he smiled. This statement was not liked by the reporter yesterday. So then Prabhupada said, and then all devotees started laughing. So, and then Prabhupada actually had heard that his name was published. So then Prabhupada is saying, he was told that next life you can become animal. He has published in my name, the Swami can become an animal. And then Prabhupada rectified, yes, the so-called Swamis, they will become animal. You see. And then all devotees started laughing more. And then Prabhupada said, but we devotees, we are not afraid of becoming animals. Our only ambition is that we remain Krishna conscious. So the animals, the cows, the calves, who are Krishna conscious. And then Prabhupada said, you have seen picture of Krishna? Yes. Better that we become animal of Krishna. So there is nothing wrong. Even if we become an animal of Krishna, that is also very worthy. That is not ordinary thing. Any associate of Krishna, either his cowherd boyfriend or calves or cows or Vrindavan tree, plants, flower or water, they are all devotees of Krishna. They like to serve Krishna in different capacities. So, to become an animal of Krishna is great, great fortune. So, the whole point Prabhupada is stressing is, either in whatever form it does not matter, either as plant or creeper in Vrindavan, even if somebody is born, even that is a most fortunate condition. And then even Prabhupada pointed out, because all the devotees were disturbed, that so many people would have read this newspaper and misunderstood something about Krishna. But then Prabhupada said, even this is Krishna consciousness. You see, Prabhupada said, even if somebody is laughingly telling about Krishna, disrespectfully talking about Krishna, but somehow if he is uttering the word Krishna, even that is for his benefit. So then Prabhupada is saying, in the newspaper you hear so much news, but if you hear something about Krishna, that is the only perfect thing. So Prabhupada is saying, in the newspaper there are so many things, so many news are there. But if there is a news about Krishna, that is a perfect thing. That news has been published in many morning paper, Krishna. So then Prabhupada is saying, in many paper they have carried, Krishna, the leader of Krishna Consciousness Movement or Hare Krishna movement, there is some vibration of the word Krishna. That makes the atmosphere purified, surcharged. So many thousands and millions of people will read Krishna, willingly or unwillingly. That is their profit. Immediately when they once utter the word Krishna, they become benefited. Never mind what is in the news. So Prabhupada is saying, it does not matter what is carried in the news. That is immaterial. Willingly, unwillingly, out of inquisitiveness, oh, what they have published about this new Swami, isn't it? Willingly, unwillingly, jokingly, somehow or other, they will read about Krishna. And Prabhupada is saying, that is their benefit. And then Prabhupada quoted that his Guru Maharaj, he used to have one yardstick for publishing any article in his magazine. I think that magazine was Sajjanatoshini, is what he used to publish, right? Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, the magazine he used to publish, so many devotees used to write articles. So, he used to have one yardstick of publishing articles in the news, in that magazine. He would make his disciple to count how many times word Krishna is mentioned, how many times word Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mentioned. And then if it was mentioned sufficient times, he would say, yes, publish it. You see. So Prabhupada quoted that actually what is more important is somehow or other people chant the name of the Lord, because it is for their benefit to make them Krishna conscious. And then Prabhupada turned to one of his disciples, Charu Das. He said, so Charu, how many times that article has mentioned Krishna? So immediately that devotee went and he started counting the names. How many times it is mentioned? So quickly he counted, 17 times Prabhupada. And how many people live in Melbourne? At least a couple of million, Prabhupada. Then Prabhupada smiled. So 17 multiplied by 2 million times that the holy name of Krishna has been chanted. You see, 17 times he has mentioned, multiplied by 2 million people who have read. 2 million people would have read that newspaper, multiplied 17 times. That many times Krishna name has been glorified, has been chanted. That is the essence. So actually, people, they don't understand. Sometimes they criticize that why in this Krishna Consciousness Movement, you only chant, you only hear about everything you do for Krishna. They fail to understand that actually Krishna himself is saying that in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna himself is saying, Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. That is the most confidential instruction. In the 9th chapter, where it is called Rajavidya, when Krishna is going to give the most confidential instruction, what is he saying? You see, just imagine the whole Bhagavad Gita, after reading, if one does not understand what is the most confidential, Krishna is speaking, 1st chapter, 2nd chapter, 3rd chapter, 4th chapter. After that, when he comes to 9th chapter, Krishna is saying, now I am going to speak to you most confidential instruction. And after saying what is that most confidential instruction, Krishna is saying, this is the most confidential instruction. Man mana bhava. Always keep me in your mind. Mad bhakta. Become my devotees. Mam namaskuru. Offer your obeisances to me. Madhyaji. Worship me. Krishna is saying this is the most confidential. And finally in the 18th chapter, after, conclusion also Krishna is giving. Sarva dharman paritajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Krishna is not telling you surrender to some devatas also. Krishna is not saying. Very clearly Krishna is saying, mam ekam sharanam vraja. So actually the essence of Bhagavad Gita is that. It is these unfortunate commentators on Bhagavad Gita who fail to understand the gist, the most important aspect of Bhagavad Gita. Just like Prabhupada gives this example. Prabhupada says, when some politician is discussing some subject matter, it's very simple to understand. Prabhupada says, how it is very simple to understand. Bhagavad Gita is filled with only Krishna consciousness. Bhagavad Gita is meant for making us Krishna conscious. They fail to understand this. So then Prabhupada gives an example. When two politicians are talking, what will they talk? What will be the talk about? Talk will be about politics. Suppose you see Prime Minister Narendra Modi visits the Prime Minister of Japan, or the Prime Minister of Japan has come to India and he's having a meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. What will they discuss? They will discuss about politics. What is happening in this country, what is happening in that country, what should be the policy, what should be the foreign policy, isn't it? What should be the commercial policy? All these things they are going to discuss. Then Prabhupada gives the example. If there are two businessmen and if they are talking with each other, what will they be discussing? Suppose two businessmen are having a meeting, important meeting, what will they be discussing? They will be discussing about business. Isn't it? So Prabhupada is saying, similarly, why don't you understand? When Bhagavan and Bhakta are discussing, what will they be discussing? This is a discussion between, Bhagavad Gita is a discussion between Bhagavan and his devotee Bhakta. Bhaktosi Sakha Cheti. Krishna is saying, I am giving this knowledge because you are my Bhakta. You see? So Prabhupada says, Bhakti is what is going to be discussed. Bhagwan and Bhakta, what will they discuss? Two businessmen will discuss business, politicians will discuss politics, Bhagwan and Bhakta will discuss bhakti. And actually that is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, sometimes we think, even as a devotee, we think this is a devotional interpretation. Right? Every verse you read, every verse you go through in Bhagavad Gita, every chapter. And in Prabhupada purport, you will find everywhere he is talking about Krishna consciousness. So sometimes many scholars, they have written, this is a very good interpretation, but this is a devotional interpretation. As if there are many other interpretations. There are non-devotional interpretations also possible. And actually that is what people have done. They have given their own different kinds of interpretations. Some people have given management interpretation. Some people have given doctor's interpretation of Bhagavad Gita. Political interpretation of Bhagavad Gita. Many politicians have also written. So you will find like that. Many people have impersonalists, they have given impersonalist interpretation of Bhagavad Gita. But actually, the real understanding of Bhagavad Gita is what Arjuna understood and what is spoken by Krishna. It's very simple. The way Arjuna understood. How did Arjuna understand Krishna? Krishna, you are some impersonal Jyoti. Did Arjuna tell Krishna after hearing Bhagavad Gita? What is he saying? Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Shashvatam Divyam, Adi Devam, Ajam Prabhu. That is what Arjuna is saying. That is his conclusion. So the whole Bhagavad Gita is actually meant for making us Krishna conscious, not some other consciousness, not Jnana. Rather, Rupa Goswami is describing, if bhakti is mixed with Jnana, if bhakti is mixed with mysticism, they're all adulteration in bhakti. Bhakti should be free from all these things. Jnana karmadi anavritam. You see, that is the meaning of devotional service. It should be unalloyed devotional service. Unalloyed means nothing else, to no one else. Not that I surrender to devatas also and I surrender to Krishna also. That is not unalloyed devotional service. So that is the same thing what is being told in today's verse also, which we can see. Actually, there is a very interesting verse. There is a science behind why, if Krishna is worshipped, all other devatas are also satisfied. All other living beings are also satisfied. It is not some sentiment. It is not that, oh, he is my loving Krishna. If I satisfy him, then everyone else is satisfied. Isn't it? It's not like a henpecked husband who is thinking, if my wife is satisfied, then everything is satisfied. It's not like that. There is a science behind this. The science is given in Bhagavatam. Narad Muni, when he is speaking to Prachetas, he gives that understanding why Krishna should be worshipped alone. When Krishna is saying, Sarva Dharman Paritajya Mam Ekam, why is he saying, unto me alone? So, Narad Muni says, he gives two examples. We have heard this example many times, but it is very scientific to understand why Krishna should be worshipped. Why he is the master of all sacrifices. And if we worship him, automatically all the devatas, all the demigods, all the living entities, they will also become satisfied. So, Narad Muni gives an example. He says, all devatas, all living entities, they are, if you compare Krishna to the root of a tree, then all other devatas, all other living entities, they're all like different branches, shakha, upashakha of the tree, leaves, they're all like that. Krishna is the root. So what do you do? If you want to water a plant, what do you do? Do you water branches? Do you water leaves? Do you water sub-branches? No. What do we do? If you want to water even the branches, the twigs, anything, what do we do? Just water the root. Another example he gives. Narad Muni says. He says, just like in the body, if you feed the stomach, if you feed the belly, all the parts, the eyes, the nose, the hands, the legs, everybody becomes satisfied. Similarly, if we simply worship Krishna, then all the demigods, all other living entities, they will all become satisfied. Naturally, they will become satisfied. Why? Because every living entity is a part and parcel of Krishna. If you serve the whole, parts are automatically taken care of. So it's a very interesting verse which we can try to remember and we can quote this. Yatha tarora moola nishechanena tripyanti tad skanda bhujapu shakhaha prana paharacha yatha indriyanam tatheva sarva eva arhanam achyuteja. So it says yatha taroho. Taro means just like in the tree. Moola means the root. Nishechanena, watering. So just like in a tree, if you water Moola nishechanena, if you water the root, then what happens? Trapyanti. Trapyanti, Prabhupada translates, satisfied. What all is satisfied in the tree? Trapyanti tad skanda. Skanda means trunk. Bhuja. Bhuja means branches. Upashakaha and twigs. If you water Moola nishechanena taror, in a tree if you water the root, tripyanti, all the parts of the tree like skanda, trunk, bhuja, branches, upashakha, twigs, all of them will be satisfied. And then he gives another example. Prana upaharat, the life air of our life. Upaharat, how it can be sustained? By feeding. Upaharat means by feeding. Ahar we say. Ahar means, upaharat means similarly feeding. Ahar means food. Upaharat cha yatha indriyanam. Just like if we feed the stomach, all the senses are satisfied. Tatheva, similarly, sarva of all the demigods, arhanam, all the demigod worship is done. Arhanam means worship is done. Achyuteja, ijya means by worshipping Achyuta, by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada translates that as pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs and everything else, as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, similarly worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. So there is a science behind why all the devatas, all the living entities are satisfied if we worship Krishna. It is not out of some sentiment, it is jnana vijnanam. This knowledge is filled with practical understanding. So we'll stop with this. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.